A teacher is a person who dedicates almost their entire life making sure that students from all over the world are receiving the education that they deserve. But I don't think most of us know how is a teacher's life outside of the classroom. That's why I decided to interview one of the teachers here in ASPV to know what her issues were, maybe teaching other countries, and what may be her issues here in ASPV. So, good afternoon, Miss. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Well, that's good. I have a few questions for you. I know you've been a teacher in many countries. Do you have any different experiences from learning about each of the cultures that you've been able to experience?
That's a good question, actually. Okay, what I've learned is that culturally, people are very different in terms of what they consider sometimes socially acceptable or what are considered social norms. But the one thing I have noticed that there are things that are the same regardless of the culture. And what is the same is that all students are the same underneath their cultural differences, in that they're all attempting to be successful at whatever they're doing, except that a lot of them don't want to show that they're trying to be successful. So a lot of them are afraid of failure, and so sometimes they cover it up through behavior or even overachieving. But regardless, that's how they're all the same, I think, is that they're all looking for some kind of success, or actually not success, recognition. That's the right word I should use. They're all looking for a kind of recognition. That's something that all the students everywhere, I think, have in common. They want to be recognized.
And also, from moving so much, have you ever experienced like any challenges, especially in a country, that you didn't maybe feel comfortable enough there, or maybe you just wouldn't get used to it?
Sure, I have. One place I lived, in my own country actually, was I lived for a little time in northern Canada, way northern Canada. I don't know if I ever told you about this. When I worked in an Inuit community, it's so far, it's above the tree line. You have to fly in on a tiny little plane. That's the only way to get in or out. And that was very challenging for me, and I wasn't equipped to deal with that. I wasn't equipped to deal with what I saw there. And I've lived in a number of different countries, and I saw more challenging things in that community than I have anywhere else.
And how long did you live there, or do you stay there?
A semester.
Just
one school semester.
And were the kids really different from like other
No,
schools
the
in
kids
Canada?
they were different in the sense that they didn't have access to all the things that kids have in other places, most other places in the world. They were the same in their desire, like I said, to be recognized, but they weren't the same in that their opportunities were so limited, and that their lives were filled with, oh boy, their lives were much more complicated and filled with probably a lot more sadness than the kids that I've seen anywhere else in the world, actually.
Do you think maybe the weather had to do a lot of it? Because
yeah, sure. Sometimes they have parts of the year where they have no sun at all. They have 24 hours of darkness. And then sometimes they have 24 hours of sun. But that can also be pretty draining, because it's not as easy to sleep when you're having to alter your sleep patterns and put garbage bags over the window. But mostly I think their problem was sheer isolation. They're so isolated. So isolated, and so small, the communities, that any small problem becomes magnified, and any problems with drugs or alcohol are really difficult to combat.
So that was definitely a thing that affected you the most, seeing the kids maybe?
That's the most challenging job I've ever had, the most challenging place I've ever lived, the most challenging situation for me, emotionally.
And what was the most comfortable, where you felt like you were like at home? In a different country other than Canada and where you're from?
I had my job, this job that I had in London, in England, I loved. I worked with behavior students there, and I loved that job. I felt really comfortable there. And those kids were very challenging.
Like, yeah, you didn't care that they had issues, how they would.
Well, they had issues,
yeah?
It's okay. It's true, they did. I mean, who doesn't? But no, I didn't. Those kids were great. Those kids actually were the ones who made me realize how much kids just want you to see them. They just want to be seen. Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be recognized. And those kids, most especially, they're the kids who covered up the most with the worst behavior. But that's not what they want. They just want you to see that they're real and that they're there in the room.
Have any of the schools you worked in, were you involved in any like community service projects that you did and helped maybe somewhere in the city or town that you were living in?
not this year, but I used to be involved in a program here in Vallarta, the School of Champions, but I haven't been doing that this year. I like that, but I found that was also, that's difficult when you come from a situation like our school and we're so organized. It's not so much the money, it's organized. It's that we are organized and the school's run by professionals. And then when you go to a volunteer school where the people have their hearts are in the right place, but it's not run by professionals, sometimes, I don't mean professional teachers, I mean people who are organized professionally, then it's sometimes hard. It's frustrating because you can see that the desire is there for people to help, but it can be a bit chaotic.
So do you mean chaotic by them not being able to organize maybe the parents and the students to help, or being chaotic that they just don't have enough money and things like that to make the school grow?
They don't have enough direction. That's probably what happens there. They don't have an actual person in charge who's solidly sure about where they're going and what they're doing. Oh, I hope you're not going to publish this anywhere because they do a lot of really good work. And they'll be really mad because I didn't work there very long. They'll be like, who is this windbag girl?
No, don't worry.
I'm serious too, because honestly, they do tons of good work. That's the only frustrating thing about it was that it was a bit, did you go with us?
No, I don't think so.
It might not be anymore, but it was a bit disorganized. But that's because I think it's a huge undertaking, and if you're going to do that, you have to have someone who's there all the time with like with a real dedicated plan, because trying to educate 50 kids
by yourself,
but with volunteers is awesome, but you need a lot of structure to do that, and it's really hard to do it when there's no there's no sort of one person who's really laying down the rules of how we're going to do things.
Do you have like any challenges that you had by moving around? Like while you were moving, do you have any challenges like missing your family and not being able to see them that often?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I miss my family all the time.
Do you go visit there often?
Yeah, in the summer and at Christmas. I do. Yeah, I totally miss my family.
But, well, I mean, Mexico's really close to Canada, but countries like London, England, was that more difficult maybe? Or did you go as often?
No, I've been going home for a couple times a year, as long as I've been able to, and I'll probably, as long as I am able to do that, even in the next place I go, which would probably be much further, I'll still want to go home and visit.
And what's maybe your plan for the future?
I'm thinking maybe somewhere in Asia next.
And
I think so.
Do you expect to work in a school like this one, or maybe one that has like less resources and volunteering and helping?
Oh, that's a good question, and it's also going to call me out because I'm probably going to end up working in a school like this one. Although I don't know, actually. I don't know. I used to think about working in a place. I always wanted to know if there was like a counterpart to, you know, Doctors Without Borders.
Yeah.
I always wondered if there was like a teaching counterpoint to that, though. I've looked and I've never seen anything.
No, me neither. Because
that's something
I'm really interested in Doctors and Borders when I grow up.
Yeah.
So I think teachers should be able to do that as well.
That's something I would actually definitely, I would do that. If I was going to, I think that would be awesome to do something like that. So if you hear of anything, let me know.
I will. Well, thank you for your time.
Okay.
And thank you. So there you go, guys. You had some information about our teacher's life. Well, I hope you found this very interesting, and I hope you appreciate what Miss Fenton does and how her life is and what she has done in the past years. Oh, and by the way, good luck with her next year.